Welcome back to the official Colorado Sports Hall of Fame podcast. I'm Dave Plati.
And I'm Jim Saccomano, and we are your co hosts with 88 years of experience working in Colorado sports. Myself with the Denver Broncos, and Dave with the CU Buffaloes. And we both did time with the AAA Denver Bears, along with several other side experiences.
This week, we continue our reveal of 150 significant moments, including eventually ranking the top 50 in state of Colorado sports history as we head into the state's 150th birthday this coming August 1st. That's the date Colorado was admitted to the Union as a 38th state in 1876. A select committee now of 12 veterans with almost 350 combined years of covering or working in sports in the state of Colorado is helping to compile that list and selecting those moments that we're counting down at the rate of 5 per week and then daily for the final top 10 come the end of July.
We've already covered numbers 116 through 150 in our last 4 podcasts. So this week, we're revealing numbers 111 through 115. As we count down, all are being archived on the Colorado Sports Hall of Fame website, along with our podcasts. Go to coloradosports.org, click on the menu bar, and then top 50, top 150 moments or podcasts.
But as always, at first, we revisit other moments in Colorado sports history that aren't in our top 150 in or around the date that we're doing our podcast. Over 1,950 now have been identified, all chronologically, signifying their importance at the time of occurrence. We are remembering moments that had significant impact on the state sports scene. For example,
on February 26, 1994, in one of the state's great farewell games, as we like to ID them, in her final home game, Mesa State's Tanya Stites scored 20 points and hauled down 14 rebounds in the Lady Mavs' 74-62 win over Western State. In the process, she became the school's all-time leading rebounder.
Let's go back to February 23rd, 1952. Frank Gompert scored 20 points and Art Bunt added 18 with 14 rebounds in Colorado's 67-57 win over number 2 ranked Kansas State in Boulder. It was the first ever win by a state team over a team ranked in the Associated Press's top 10 and avenged a 92-40 loss the Buffaloes suffered in Manhattan 3 weeks earlier. CU held the Wildcats to 29.6% shooting from the field, just making 21 of 71 shots and reversing a 52-point loss.
That's quite a reversal. On February 25th, 1990, the longtime voice of the Denver Broncos, Bob Martin, lost his 3-year fight with bone cancer at the age of 57. He had fallen ill a month earlier, the night before the Broncos played San Francisco in the Super Bowl. One of the first true radio sports icons in the region, he came to Denver in 1954 as the program director for KMYR Radio, with stops at KMOR and KTLN before landing at KOA. He started doing the play-by-play for the Broncos in 1964, and in all did 499 broadcasts. Colorado's Sportscaster of the Year for 17 straight years, he was credited with the first true sports talk program in the state, April 1955, which he did solo weekday nights for an hour.
Now, obviously, you were on that trip. How did that transpire the night before the game? How did you all find out what was going on?
We all had dinner or whatever, and it's just one of those things that buzzed through our version of the hotel people that Bob couldn't do it, so Larry was going to take the play-by-play role. Fortunately, we had Larry Zimmer, and Bob. That was it. Bob was ill, and he'd been ill for some time, but he'd been able to continue, and that was it pretty much for him at the 49ers.
Mm. Well, let's go off script for a moment. In light of the USA's gold medal win in hockey Sunday, if we were to list the greatest moments in U.S. sports history, wouldn't you think it would have to be the USA winning the gold medal in the 1980 Olympics at Lake Placid? And that was on February 22nd, 1980. How would you do a list for the United States, Jim?
Oh my gosh. I think you think of the Olympics, you think of Jesse Owens, Rayford Johnson, the women's 1999 World Cup, Ryder Cups, Jesse Owens at the Berlin Olympics, etc. It's incredible. It really is. When you do the list that is the list, not too many come to mind, but a few are just indelibly etched.
And you couldn't use team sports. It'd have to really probably be limited to mostly individual things.
Individual accomplishments, individual sports,
Yeah.
which is a great reason why we even do this.
Yep. Other than teams in the Olympics, of course. All
Yeah.
right.
And now on with the top 150 countdown.
One of the greatest moments in Colorado sports history, number 115.
On April 15th, 2019, on our list, we also like to recognize great debuts and one of the greatest in local hockey history, and a rare time it happened in the playoffs. 3 days after Cole Makar was named winner of the Hobie Baker Award as the top collegian, and 2 days after his UMass Minutemen lost to Minnesota in a Frozen Four semifinal, Makar made his professional debut in Game 3 of the first round of the Stanley Cup playoffs. The first and to date only defenseman in NHL history to make his debut in the playoffs, he scored a goal in his very first game and on his very first shot on goal. Colorado won that game 6-2 over the Calgary Flames.
One of the greatest moments in Colorado sports history, number 114.
On March 18th, 1961, in Hutchinson, Kansas, Pueblo Junior College won the National JC Athletic Association's NJCAA basketball title, completed a four-game tourney sweep by defeating Tyler, Texas, 79-66. Bob Warlick, named the tournament's MVP, led the Indians in the tournament, scoring 86 points. He had 26 in the title game. The team was coached by the late Harry Simmons, a 1982 inductee into the Colorado Sports Hall of Fame.
One of the greatest moments in Colorado sports history, number 113.
On July 29th, 1984, Boulder's Connie Carpenter became the first American woman to win the gold medal in Olympic road cycling, winning the 79-kilometer race at Los Angeles Summer Games. Neck and neck with fellow American Rebecca Twigg, the two accelerated into a frantic sprint over the last 50 meters, with Carpenter winning by all of 2 inches to claim the gold medal. It would be 40 years until the next American woman would win the gold.
One of the greatest moments in Colorado sports history, number 112.
On April 5th, 1924, tiny Windsor High School, the two-time state champ from the town with the same name, northeast of Loveland, and a population of 1,290, won the National Interscholastic Basketball Championship in Chicago, defeating Yankton, South Dakota, 25-6. The event started with 40 teams, and in the end, the Bulldogs beat 4 other state champions and won 5 games in all, the only undefeated team left standing. Arthur Law led the way to the title game with 12 points. The school changed its nickname to Wizards following the win, after being referred to as such in media accounts.
One of the greatest moments in Colorado sports history, number 111.
On December 13th, 1983, one of the wildest and the highest scoring game in NBA history took place at McNichols Sports Arena. 370 total points were scored in a 3-overtime thriller. The visiting Detroit Pistons left town with a 186-184 victory over the Nuggets. It was tied at 74 at the half and at 145 all at the end of regulation. It was a different time. While the Nuggets and Pistons combined to take 251 shots, each team, get this, was only one of 2 from three-point range. One of 2. That happens in 20 seconds anymore. 6 players scored 28 or more points. 4 over 40, with Denver's Kiki Vandeweghe leading all scorers with 51. Alex English at 47, and Dan Issel at 28. Detroit was led by Isaiah Thomas with 47 and John Long with 41. At this time, we want to welcome 1987 Colorado Sports Hall of Fame inductee and one of the all-time favorite Denver Nuggets, Dan Issel. Dan, welcome to our podcast.
Thank you very much. Pleasure to join you.
We want to revisit 3 significant Nugget moments with you, but first let's go back to that 3-overtime thriller. What memories do you have from it?
We lost. That's the number. That's the number one memory. It's hard to play over 60 game minutes and come away with a losing effort. But Detroit was different. A lot of teams came into Denver and tried to slow us down, slow the tempo of the game down. But Detroit was athletic enough. You mentioned Long and Isaiah. They didn't try to slow us down. They were very happy to run with us, and that's exactly why we scored so many points. I think it's very interesting the way the game is today, Dave. That it's either a 3-point shot or a dunk. And to think the highest scoring game in NBA history only had 4 3-pointers attempted is pretty unusual.
Dan, the game has changed from this aspect alone. There were 6 points scored on threes in that game. In yesterday's Nuggets Golden State game, there were 87. What in your mind caused that big change over time?
Analytics. Um, I'm smart enough to know that 3 is more than 2, Jim. But I'm also smart enough to know 2 is more than 0. And sometimes I watch these games. I want to throw something at the television because they've got an easy shot inside, and they throw it out for a 3-pointer. So I guess analytics tells you that's the way the game should be played. But I don't know. It looks like teams today give up an awful lot of easy scoring opportunities to take a chance on shooting a 3-pointer.
We're going to bring in Tim Simmons now, who is the PR director for the Nuggets, their first year in the NBA, and of course work with Dan Issel. So, Tim, our executive producer, we're going to give you some airtime to revisit with Dan.
Well, Dan, you were talking about the easy shot. I always marveled at your move when you get the ball right there at the free throw line. And if they didn't come out, you'd pop a jumper. And if they came out on you, you put the ball on the floor and go to the hoop. And I wish more teams or players would do that, but they want to shoot from the outside, it seems like. So kind of talk about that move.
Yeah, the intermediate game, the 12 to 15 foot jump shot was a very important part of the game when I played, Tim. But now you don't find many players that have that shot in their game. And I was when I was playing, I was the second shortest center in the NBA. Only Wes Unseld was shorter. And so it was to my advantage to try and pull some of those big guys out away from the basket. Not because they couldn't guard me, but they just weren't used to that, to having that defense in their repertoire. So that being able to hit a 15-foot jumper kept me in professional basketball for 15 years. Now, I don't know that it would be much of an asset today.
Well, we talked about it more if it was a win, but I do want to bring up one thing and see if you remember this. You were the one who missed Denver's 1 3-point try. Was that a desperation shot at the end of a quarter or an OT?
I saw that, Dave, and it had to be. I don't I don't recall, but that 3-pointers weren't really in my range. That was a little far for me. So thanks for bringing that up. That I missed the 3-pointer in that game, but it had to be a shot at the end of the quarter or something like that.
Well, I did see that you made 29 of them over your career, so you definitely you made a few from outside there. Okay, so now let's revisit the ABA-NBA merger. The last year in the ABA was turbulent, to say the least. You spent your first 5 years with the Kentucky Colonels, and then was traded a month ahead of the 75 season opener to the Baltimore Claws. 3 weeks after that team had relocated from Memphis, and then 3 weeks later, you were traded to Denver. The Claws played 3 preseason games, but folded right before the season started, and eventually the league was down to just 7 teams. How crazy of a time was that for you?
Yeah, it was. I was always fortunate that I was able to play with a team in the ABA that was pretty financially sound. First, the Colonels, I think early on, the Colonels and the Indiana Pacers were two of the most solid franchises. And then when Carl Scheer got to Denver, Denver joined that list. But I prefer, I don't use the word traded. I prefer the word sold, because John Y. Brown, who owned the Kentucky Colonels after we won the championship, had still lost money, and he decided he was going to sell one of his assets to make up the difference. So I was actually sold to the Baltimore Claws. And Tom Owens, I think, to make it look like a trade, went to the Colonels. But John Y., in the 10 days I was in Baltimore, John Y. never received his payment. And so Carl Scheer stepped in and said he would make the payment. And I was on my way, thank goodness, on my way from Baltimore to Denver. And poor Dave Robish had to go to Baltimore to make it look like a trade. And I think Dave wound up shutting down like 3 franchises that year. But yeah, I try to block the 10 days from my memory that I was in Baltimore and a member of the Claws.
Yeah, I saw it was $750,000, but maybe they folded because Claus might have been one of the dumber nicknames ever assigned to a pro team.
Well, it was Dave DeBuscher, the great Nick forward, was commissioner of the ABA during that time, and he was just trying to keep the league alive. And he actually just gave the Memphis franchise. Charlie Finley was tired of spending money, and he just gave the franchise to these 2 guys in Baltimore. They were actually rock star promoters. They promoted rock star shows, and they had no clue what they were doing. In fact, when I was in Baltimore, I did receive 1 paycheck, and when I got to Denver, I still had the check, and I deposited in the bank here in Denver to open up my account, and it bounced. And so they had no clue as to what they were doing.
Wow.
During that winter that you were first winter in Denver, were the players kept apprised of what was going on with the NBA, or were you just playing because you guys obviously advanced to the ABA finals against the Nets that year, but how much were the players in the loop with the merger talks with the NBA?
Yeah, Tim, not a lot. We were made some promises that were never fulfilled. For instance, our years in the ABA would count as far as an NBA pension was concerned, and that never came to fruition. But in Denver, Carl Scheer came to Denver and bought the then Denver Rockets with the express purpose of getting that franchise into the NBA if there was ever a merger, consolidation, whatever you want to call it. And so I think for that final year, we were the guys on the roster here in Denver were pretty confident that we were going to have a spot when that happened. I mean, Carl had such foresight that there was already a team called the Rockets in the NBA, and that's why he changed the name to the Nuggets so that there wouldn't be a conflict of nicknames when we went into the NBA.
I'm wondering if he knew there was a Denver Nugget franchise in the NBA in the late 1940s. And I wonder if that's where he got the nickname from.
I think they held a contest, Dave. But I'm sure that's where a lot of those votes came from, was that people remembering that name. And so, it changed to the Nuggets a couple of years before the merger. But, with Carl Scheer making sure that we would be one of the teams included, it made a lot of sense.
It seemed like the ABA teams weren't first welcomed by the old guard so much. Red Auerbach, of course, was publicly known for despising the league. So how refreshing was it to open that year 8-0 and then go on to win the Midwest Division title?
Yeah, I think we knew it. I don't know if the NBA knew it or not, but of course, we knew the ABA was playing great basketball. People can't remember or don't believe that back at that time, the NBA couldn't draft you until your college class graduated. It didn't matter if you went to college or not. And of course, Spencer Haywood, one of the all-time great Denver Rockets / Nuggets, was the one who changed that. And then the ABA started signing kids out of college early, even high school. Moses Malone came right from high school to the ABA, but we were able to get people like Dr. J and George McGinnis and Julius Erving and George Gervin, on and on and on. And we knew we were playing as good a basketball as they were in the NBA. And like you said, I think the first 2 years we were in the NBA, the Nuggets won the Midwest Division.
Dan, that first year, obviously, we finished 50-32, got a first round bye, and then had to play Portland in the second round. And I just remember one of the great games that you had. We won the second playoff game in Denver on May 1st, and we beat Portland 114-105 in overtime. And it was a Sunday afternoon. CBS was there, Musburger, Cunningham. And I went up to you and I said, Dan, they want you for the post-game interview. You said, Tim, go into my locker and get my teeth. So what do you remember about that playoff series and that great game that you had? I think you scored 23 points, had 18 rebounds, 4 assists, and 3 blocks.
Yeah, I didn't want to go on national TV without my teeth, so I'm glad you retrieved those for me.
That's a great
about
story.
The game, about that playoff series, it was such a dynamic one. Obviously, it was probably Walton's greatest year in the NBA.
Yeah, you look at, people ask me today, Tim, about Joker, and if there's anybody that I can compare him to, and I said no, he's a one of a kind. There's never been anybody that plays the game like he plays. But I think the closest that I could come to would be Bill Walton. Before Bill had all of his injuries and all of those issues, he was a pretty special player. He couldn't pass like Joker, but he could pass, and he was probably he could score like Joker. He could rebound like Joker. He's probably a better defender than Joker is, but no, Bill Walton was as tough as anybody in the game in those days.
Hey, I've got one to throw in here before Jim asks you something, but we hope to have him on later in our countdown is David Thompson and that crazy Sunday where it was Thompson versus Gervin for the scoring title, and the games were 4 hours apart. DT scored 73, Gervin scored 63 to beat him out like half a basket. What were the instructions that day from the coaches, and what were you guys doing to be sure David could have a shot at the record?
Yeah, don't shoot, pass it to David. Those were our instructions. And of course, Doug Moe at that time was coaching San Antonio, and obviously everybody knew what we were doing, trying to get DT the scoring record. And what did you say? Gervin had 65.
63. He needed to score 58 to beat him, and he scored 63.
Yeah, in 3 quarters. He scored 63 in 3 quarters. So they had the same instructions in San Antonio. Don't shoot, pass it to ice.
Dan, you played 10 seasons in Denver under 3 head coaches. What are your fondest memories?
Well, we got to the Western Conference Finals a couple of times. I guess that would be the fondest memory. The last year I played, we got to the Western Conference Finals against the Lakers, and of course they had Magic and Kareem and a roster full of Hall of Fame players and Pat Riley coaching. And Doug actually got fined before the series. He said, we got no shot to beat this team. And the NBA didn't like that and fined Doug. But of course, he was absolutely right. We lost that lost that series in 5 games, and the 5th game in the Forum. I'll always remember this because it was my number. The last game I played in the NBA, we got beat by 44 points.
Oh my God.
Doug, I think it's appropriate now to talk about Doug Moe and after his passing last week and so forth. What comes to mind about Doug? Because you got to remember, you played for Adolph Rupp in Kentucky. You played for Larry Brown and Doug Moe, Hubie Brown, and they're all Hall of Famers. So what comes to mind about Doug Moe?
Yeah, Doug was just way ahead of his time. We didn't have any plays. It was all the passing game, and Doug was 2 different people. He was laid back, easy going until the ball tipped off, and then he was and I think this is the image a lot of people have of him running up and down the sidelines and yelling and screaming and cursing and. But as soon as the game was over, he was that same laid back guy again. My favorite, if I could take a second, my favorite memory of Doug was in that game I just referenced. I'm sitting, of course, I'd been out for a while. I'm sitting at the end of the bench, reflecting on my career, and I think I hear Doug call my name, and that can't be. What's he calling me for? And sure enough, he called me again. And I went up and he said, I want you to go in and I want your last shot to be a 3-pointer. And so, here he is getting run out of the gym. The season is a couple minutes from ending, and he's thinking about me and my career. So I go in the game, and the second time down the court, I get an open look at the 3-pointer. And as you said earlier, I only made 29 in 10 years, or excuse me, 9 years of the NBA. But I let one fly, and by the grace of God, it went in the basket. And Doug immediately took me out and gave me a high five, big smile. And it turned out, what was a disastrous game turned out to be a nice memory for me, thanks to Doug.
Well, Doug was a classic and so forth. David?
I think we all have funny stories with Doug. My 2 are, Doug's affinity for fantasy leagues, Dan. And we had a baseball draft. I think it was our 1985 or 6. And the only games on that day on TV would either be on WTBS with the Braves or Cub games. But our draft was at night, so we had a Braves game on. So he drafted somebody in the 3rd or 4th round. By the time our 17th, 18th round came around, that guy was 0 for 4 in the game. So the draft's not over, and Doug looks at him and goes, that guy's a stiff. I'm waving him now. Like, who waves a player on the 3rd day of the season in a fantasy draft?
Well, I've got a story that goes along with it. Doug never looked at a game film in his life, didn't pay any attention to scouting reports. His philosophy was, if we go out and play the way we're capable of playing, the other team has to worry about playing us. And one year, Doug starts carrying a briefcase on the road. And, people, what's he got in that briefcase? Is he finally looking at game film? Does he have any analytics or something in there? He was carrying his fantasy football league stuff in this briefcase.
Well, I remember one other time he comes over and was the playoff game in Denver, and I was a talent statistician for TBS, and it was with Rick Barry and Bill Russell, who I kind of worked with on the West Coast games. So he comes over to talk to them, and then he looks at me, goes to Rick Barry, and goes, This stiff is keeping your stats. He's in last place in our fantasy baseball league."
Hey,
when he
Dan,
called you a
finally,
stiff, that's when you knew he liked you.
Hey, Dan, finally, I know my memories of you, obviously, is you coming into the office, busting everybody's chops with Chopper Travellini, Bob King, John Millen, and so forth. What do you remember about the front office days? Because it was a pretty close team back there, going from the ABA into the NBA.
Yeah, no, everybody got along. Everybody enjoyed each other. We didn't have 14 assistant coaches sitting behind the bench. It was Doug, and Bill Fickey and Chopper Travellini, and that was it. And I think we talked earlier about the way the game's played today. I think another thing that has changed a great deal is we had a lot of fun. We enjoyed each other's company, making fun of one another. We got along. We were friends off the court, and we smiled a lot. And I don't know if it's the money that's involved, the pressure today with social media, but I don't see anybody smile. I don't see anybody look like they're really having a good time.
Finally, Dan, what are you doing these days?
Going to my grandson's basketball and baseball games. I'm completely retired, bothering Sherry here at home. Went to 2 basketball games yesterday afternoon, and just enjoying life. I've been blessed that my health is good. Nothing hurts. Nothing's been replaced, and just enjoying a great life.
You're probably one of the few that hasn't had those physical problems with knees, shoulders, or whatever.
Tim, I tell people I didn't run fast enough or jump high enough to get hurt.
Well, that's very true. David?
Okay, well, Dan, thank you for hopping on with us today. We really enjoyed it. This was very enjoyable, one of our good ones. We think they're all good, but this is up there at the top of the 17 we've done. So thanks again for taking the time to join us.
I enjoyed every minute of it. Thanks, guys. Have a great day.
Thanks.
Hey, Dave, I would like to offer one thing. I know during my time, it was such a pleasure to work with Dan. Obviously, he and Chuck Williams, who is in the Colorado Sports Hall of Fame, also were always available. And, us 3 media guys, Sacco, Plati, and Simmons, always appreciate guys like Issel, who were straightforward, was always there to do it, even if I had to go get his teeth. But what a pleasure it was to work with you, Dan.
Amen.
Thank you very much.
Well, everybody, we hope you're enjoying our podcast. Keep spreading the word. We want to thank our sponsors, Pasta J's of Boulder, 10th and Pearl, just west of the Pearl Street Mall, and the Colorado Collegiate Chronicle, published by that very executive producer you just heard, Tim Simmons, another veteran PR man that is a in-depth look weekly at college sports around the state. And the voice of the Buffaloes, Mark Johnson, for introducing each of our special moments.
That's a wrap on our 16th podcast. Tune in next week for the next reveal of the state's top 150 moments. We hope you're enjoying our reminiscing with our Colorado Sports Hall of Fame guests, as well as our trips down memory lane in the state's sports history. A reminder that the Hall offers tours of its museum, as well as in Power Field and Mile High Stadium, and that the class for 2026 will be inducted on April 16th at the Hilton City Center in downtown Denver.